Sea Palace high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And as I search for authenticity in the age that we're living in, I oftentimes seek out people that are trying to carve their own path in this society that values money more than anything else. In some ways, I look at it as a 39-year-old and I say to myself that the only way to base success in this society is based on the almighty dollar, and greed has really kind of superseded anything else, at least at the mainstream popular level. So when I'm out there on new media, carving out my niche, I tend to look for other people who are seeking or have sought and are still climbing the mountain. And my next guest is doing just that. Tsadae, Neway, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you so much for seeking me out and giving us, myself and my people that I work with, an opportunity to have a voice representing possibilities.
That's what I want. I mean, I think that both of us have children. I think that for me, my children help me dream again, and to live in a kind of a time that is perceived as by so many as dark and hopeless and in some ways apocalyptic. I want to reach out to people that are glowing and that have light. And I just wanted to start by asking you, how do you attribute your development of your identity as an African-American woman living in this country? I mean, was it through did your parents raise you as educated? I just want you to talk about how you developed a strong identity.
Okay. It sounds like a couple different questions. First of all, being born here as in the Bay Area in California in the United States, I am of a mixed race heritage, so I'm actually first generation Ethiopian and third generation with roots in Poland and Russia. So my parents meet in the Bay Area. So an identity as an African American, yes, you do have to check that box. That's what's available. I do identify as an African woman because that's my experience here, even living in America. And then I'm not quite sure what you said in terms of the question as coming from education. Can you reframe that for me, please?
Tsadae, I want to be clear about something. There are no real right or wrong answers. And sometimes my questions, it's whatever you feel you need to answer. So I don't want you to think that you have to answer something correctly. But I'm getting at the idea that even though you were of mixed race, you still identify yourself as an African American because of the color of your skin, and that's your identity.
And it's part of your experience. You know, even if you don't identify, you're still having an experience based on even how others see you. So it's a twofold, right?
100%. No, you're nailing it. So what I'm trying to get at is that I've been sort of fixated on this idea of recently, just in general, this idea of white privilege and trying to educate. And I want people that have actually the experience. Could you talk about a defining moment in your life, in your experience, that was unique to you growing up in America? Because I can't speak. I'm just a white cat. I'm just a cat that, I've had privilege here. And even though you're mixed and you have roots in Europe, you've had your own experience, and I just would like you to talk about a specific time that you can attribute to the strength of you becoming comfortable with your identity.
Interesting. Well, first, I'd like to just acknowledge my own birth mother as my first experience is a country and a land that I come from. So that organic experience transcends the concept of race. So we grow into that outside of our experience of love. That being said, my first, as you grow, you realize that as I code switch in these different opposite opposing worlds that blend quite beautifully in the East Bay area, in particular in the 70s, the early 60s and 70s and 80s, an amazing movement happened here that was very embracing of the children that came out of these blends. It's still very much a work in progress, and the history proves that through laws, etc., and how one has to identify, even if they are of mixed heritage, right? There's another layer to the complexity. My experience, I would say, going to schools is immediately you can start to notice who's being tracked in AP classes, what schools become underfunded in the arts. You saw that right away. You saw the zoning that happened that put different classes and cultural, ethnic backgrounds in different groupings. So that happens even in a, quote, non-segregated society. Segregation is happening within cities. Myself, I had a really profound taste. This is not by any chance my first, but since you asked the question that stands out, is growing up in Oakland, California schools, public schools, and then having a trip to Alamo, where there was a student cultural exchange that happened. There was a number of us in Oakland that became ambassadors, went on a trip, and they came here. And long story short, when our group went to Alamo, it was so profound, the difference from every expression that came out of the students' mouths, just having our presence there. This is just Oakland to Alamo, and that's in the mid-'80s.
Could you talk specifically about what came out of their mouths?
Oh, I was laughing, and somebody said, "Am I having an African spasm?"
Holy cow.
So those things don't leave you. And that's just like so light compared to what my sisters and brothers are dealing with daily, including my daughter now, just what they deal with when they're out in the world. And what's shocking is that people are still shocked that it can still be so profound right here and now, 2017, that when you ask about our experience of white supremacy, for most of us, our mothers are dealing with that just in the hospital context, from birth, from the womb, then generations back. So there's post-traumatic stress. It's being passed down. So these are just new things that we are starting to measure and even acknowledge as facts, But we're understanding this on a bigger dimension of the impact that white supremacy has had over hundreds and hundreds of years.
Talking to Tsadae Neway here on the Jake Feinberg Show, and so could you talk about, you were birthed by a mixed race couple, but you talk about these opposing worlds in the East Bay area. Could you the blend worked so well? Can you talk about an example of it working well? Going to the Alamo, going to Texas in general, just being a culture shock. But what was so vibrant about that opposing world that worked so well?
Actually, Alamo is in California. It's just another city. That's
you have to excuse. There's so many cities. Yeah. So you weren't even going outside the state. You were just going to some different.
No, I'm just talking about 40-minute drive.
Wow.
40-minute drive from where your normal circle might be. That even when we think everything by us is so accepting, it's not, right? That we can kind of get sheltered in these bubbles. And then we realize the rest of the world isn't really like that.
So in your mind, wow, this is really heavy stuff. So could you talk about how those opposing worlds worked so well? I just went to Berkeley to visit a fantastic bass player, David Margan. I was there about a year ago. And the gentrification of that area is astounding. And I wonder how you look at it now. Is it more challenging now because of the money and the white supremacy and the white privilege than it was in the 70s and 80s?
Oh, it's totally different. It's totally different. And it's every year it seems like 5 years has gone on in terms of the drastic change. The last 5 years have been pretty extreme, but it's been happening, really clearly. Over the last 30 years, I see just huge, huge difference. If we want to talk about like really specifics, because we're talking to your broader audience, I think families used to have more time to be families, and there was more time for creative energy, just where everybody wasn't forced to have 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs and maybe something on the side they're trying to do just to make ends meet or not.
Absolutely.
It's so challenging, and so we're seeing the difference. And you just can, every day I see all these different layers of years, as if time is not just linear, and I can see what it used to be as these big new high rises are going up at huge luxury and costs without any program that is transparent, because they really don't want to provide a certain amount of, I don't even want to say low income, I want to say affordable housing. People have the right to housing, and they're being kicked out, and we're seeing more and more suffering, and people don't want to look at it on the street. They just want it out of their way. They just got here. They don't realize that what's happening when you're coming into a place from somewhere else and you're moving people out, and jobs are changing, and where do you expect people to go?
The thing for me that was astounding, just being sort of, hopping back and forth on my trip there from San Francisco to Oakland, was the sort of almost normalcy of I had been there 16 years earlier, and there was a homeless population, and it just seemed to have grown in a very prolific way. And so I tend to look at part of my show is about love. You've mentioned love and the idea that there's a callousness that's enveloping us that has to do with materialism. And is there a way to talk about what you see and how, like you said, it's been going on for 30 years, right? But the last 5, as it tends to happen, things start to really go quick. Can you talk about the quickness of the last 5 years? What is so perverted about this sort of lack of understanding of humanity versus, we're just going to build this stuff because if anybody that can afford it can live, and those who can't, too bad.
We have to look to each other more, and I think we have to find more solutions on a smaller local level, and those local organizations are going to be the ones that have to be funded on a bigger scale level, because they're the ones who are there on the streets helping people, doing the work to see who needs what kind of services and food. There's just so much that could be said there, and I see a lot of people with huge hearts that want to do something, but it's really tricky because there's also a huge pushback of if you are helping, that there's just too much that you can't do it alone, right? And so how do you create possibilities for people to take care of each other in a time when they're still trying to just make their own ends meet, house themselves, feed their children, do all those things that daily life requires, and also do that for the suffering? It has to happen, not just, it has to be that in these bigger spaces of government agencies that they're being funded. And that's the part that's worrisome, is I don't have all those answers. So when you speak about love, I say that's what is the remedy when we're overwhelmed and don't know what to do. We do our best to still nourish ourselves on a daily basis, take care of ourselves, and be honest. Like, what more can we do? Where can my energy and my impact be the most effective? I see churches down the street organizing and giving out food. I see farmers markets having extra food. I see stores having to throw away food, which I don't understand. You know, we have to change those places where there's just problems. Like, if there's excess food, it needs to be given to those in need. Same like what's happening abroad, you know, all of these areas that need all of these supplies, and it's being held up, from Puerto Rico to the Virgin Islands to all St. Martin and Barbuda, all the ones that we're not even hearing about, that aren't getting the coverage. But, you know, there is enough. There is enough resources. We just have to, I think, individually not be excessive. We have to get to the root of, like, what is enough? What is enough? What do we really need? And
right.
those
Well, I mean,
who
it's
have
it,
more
it,
than they need.
yeah. This is you're articulating it beautifully, Tsadae. The issue is that you Tsadae. I'm sorry, Tsadae.
Stop it.
Yeah, you know, but here's the issue, and I need you to break it down because you use the word honesty, and clearly you are looking at it objectively. But you talk about people being, I forget the word you used about being shocked, they're still shocked about racism, that they're still shocked. That's the shocking part, that there hasn't been this realization, right? There's no honest dialogue really going on about this. I mean, like you said, what is enough? What is enough? When do you have enough? The same can be said for gun control. How many guns do you need? How many bullets do you need? Okay, but you need to have an honest discussion, not to say we live in a free country and anything goes. So while you're trying, don't you feel, I mean, how do you stay inspired through your business, through your work, through your energy, through your spirit? How do you stay inspired knowing that you are authentically trying to do your part and build a community, and knowing that there really is no interest on the other side, to be honest? In fact, the pushback is brutally unfair. And so it's that crux of it. You said white people are still surprised. They're still, I forget the word you exactly used. I apologize. But they're still shocked. That the fact that they're still shocked is what's shocking. You understand? And so as long as there's
called denial, actually.
Okay, so that's what I'm getting. So you riff on that.
Denial.
Right.
Yeah, it's a huge denial that's part of the sickness that white supremacy is. And everybody who's in denial about it has part of this bigger sickness. And the way that you're identified, not just how you want to see yourself or what the DNA test reads, but actually how you move in the world and how people relate to you based on how you look, and then those other unseen things, who you relate to that you can't tell by looking at you. Maybe some people intuitively sense that. Those are, you know, the other levels of how we present. However, you know, we don't have time for people who are just in thick denial. At this point, we only have time for people who are ready to move forward, because if we're not doing that and seeing that this huge problem exists because of white supremacy, because of all those things that come under it, you have to get away from just, I identify as a white person, so I'm being accused as a white supremacist. That's not all that we're saying, okay? If you identify as a white person in the world, you have to look at what that privilege is that comes with that. Every aspect of your daily life, how that impacts you from how people interact with you. So then there's the systemic and systematic ways that works in your favor, that other people who don't identify as white and can't check that box are treated differently. that exists. That's not debatable. So if people want to debate that, there's really no time. So to get back to love is to focus on what's real and what's needed as the remedy in life, is that in order for us to get past this as a problem, we really have to honor each other as everybody has the human right to have a place to live, to have food, to have shelter, to have a right to education. And I'm not saying, and if they're sick, and there's many different ways that we define sickness and imbalance, they need help. And if our society can't help those who are not well, then we're going to have the gun violence out of control. We're going to have other things that are completely out of control that you brought up. So what's important is that we have to understand that they're not going to suspect a certain category of a white male. That's the last suspect. So until we can see that and look at people of individually, what is this person capable of? Where did they come from? Everybody has to, and it's not just going to become equal, you see. And that's the pain that I've heard the elders who have come before. They have said this. Maya Angelou just said that. You know, my pain is that I don't know that it's all going to change in my lifetime. So knowing that, I just know what side I have to be on and who I'm for. And I'm for the liberation and the love of the down-pressed, the oppressed, you know, the two-legged, and the four-legged, and the winged ones. Those who have built this country brick by brick, stone by stone. Everything from the railroad to who digs in our dirt and plants our food. And until we honor the people who work in service to the earth for the preservation of all, then we aren't going anywhere. We're going that other way a bit too fast. And that's where we're worried. So what gives me hope is that I see people every day that believe in this earth and believe in relationships and believe that as long as we're here, we should do the best we can. So to even bring it full circle to a practical level, like I think you initially called us because we have a couple businesses, and my family is a family of entrepreneurs. And we believe you should live your life based on your passions and what is important to you from now. Like, why wait 5 years, 10 years, 20 years when these are such intense times? Let's do what we can with the time that we have while we're here and do our best. And maybe we have the possibility of prolonging it. So, yeah, I stand with my brothers and sisters who feed people. I stand with my brothers and sisters who, you know, speak for the voiceless, for those who are behind bars that shouldn't be. There's so much. I don't feel like it's a personal thing why you called myself to the airwaves today. So,
well, I'll tell you why. I mean,
listen,
you know, for 6 years I've been on the radio, and my family, my wife is Taiwanese, my daughters are multi-race, and I started my show originally in 2011 because I couldn't believe as a 32 or 33-year-old that, in fact, Barack Obama was being treated the way he was back then. So I didn't know exactly what was coming. I couldn't see the future, but I could just tell that we were developing, naively, living in the 90s, going to college at Boston University, and always just loving diversity and difference. I just kind of assumed we were living through a post-racial time. And then to see this sort of, that's why I started my show. So when I see cats like you, regardless of your employment, it's differentiation. It's not tribalism. It's not formulaic similarity. It is difference, and not only appreciating difference, but accepting that that is what America is and always has been and is becoming more and more. And that is why I reached out to you. But the question is, though, the question is, you talk about programs that need to be supported by government, okay, that need to help people that don't have food, that don't have shelter. They need, and this is what I want, because I believe that you have visions of you're visionary in some ways. And I wonder, I don't know, because there's so much cronyism in our political structure today. Is government really going to ever address the needs of the underprivileged, of the people, of all the people, or is it really, as what happened with, beautiful leaders like Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela and other people? You can go back and is it going to be a collective consciousness move, a social consciousness shift by large majorities of people that won't even necessarily get legislation passed, but will on their own, in a collective fashion, help those who are less fortunate?
Well, that seems to be the message coming out of the island of Puerto Rico this morning.
I haven't watched the news today, so you tell me what the message is.
Well, I just heard one woman, basically, who was on a news report saying that we're not able to wait for what the U.S. government has promised, that we have to look towards ourselves. And that's more of what they trust to be real and true. They said no matter what is being told of us, we're still without. So I'm not there. I'm not the helicopters flying overhead and getting that view. It's coming through the social media that we're able to get any of the stories, for the most part, of what is happening there. And that's what I think is what people feel in the time of crisis like this, is that's unfortunately what people are going to be more and more motivated by, to look as a solution. And hopefully more of us can look at it from now and see what can we do because based on what we're seeing happen, how dependable is anybody going to be on the government system to come in our favor? So that's the sad part. When the government is supposed to be for the people, by the people, of the people, that's what has to be recreated in that true way. And I can't say exactly what the ideal looks like, but what I continue to be inspired by is the youth around me who are looking to us for hope, even though they bring it because they are here and they are the future, but they're looking to us to say, it's not that bad, right? It's not just going to go downhill from there. They're looking to us to see, okay, we're going to get through this. And so even if on a daily basis as a parent we're challenged by that truth, not necessarily believing that, when every day it's a new tragedy, a new thing that could totally just take us away from the daily path ahead to get through our dreams and visions for life, we have to provide that possibility for them to see solutions and how to make this better. And we have to also work towards that as a model. Otherwise, what are we going to do? Like, really, what are we doing?
Well, you're 100% right. I'd like you to talk about a time in your life when you, this is what I just did my second interview with Charles Neville of the Neville Brothers, and he's talking about people don't think for themselves anymore. And I really want you to talk about a time in your life when maybe your peers or society told you was telling you one thing. Like you said, we're getting all these reports on social media. We're not on the ground, but there's so much information out there on any issue that most people are not thinking. Most people are not thinking for themselves anymore. And I'd like you to talk about a time in your life, could be any time, when you just thought for yourself because you trusted your intuition based on the education and knowledge that you had received from your family and also your education, but experientially, when you thought for yourself and looking back on it, it was an emboldening choice and it made you a stronger person.
Whoa, this is powerful question.
I mean, listen, the Jake Feinberg show. You should have done your homework, man. I mean, that's there's no Gen Xer doing what I'm doing.
Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah, I know you are. No, you're way up. Ready. Yeah, you're up for the challenge. You're up. Go ahead.
I just want to first. This is so hard to say so publicly, and yet I'm so compelled because this is for every single woman, every daughter, every man, every person who wants to have a child in this world and feels like that's possible, that it can be done in the most sacred, beautiful way. And the way that I did it was at home. And I really want to empower women to, first and foremost, visualize and think about the type of birth that they would want to have before they allow the institution of birth to tell them what childbirth looks like. And I think we need to think about this also for families. As couples come together and bring new life into the world, how is that experience going to impact the type of relationships they have from that point forward? I'm very much about awareness from conception and from the beginning of life and how that can play out. Living life is not easy every day. We're challenged, but the more that we choose to be as conscious and present as we can, so much comes out of that. And having my children at home and doing certain things in our family's life to create ritual outside of just a regular routine and, habitual mechanical life, you restore the possibilities of how we do create community and protect what's sacred. And then you can start creating the type of community and environment that supports that. Because when you take time to nurture life, it puts you in a different awareness. And it doesn't mean you have to give birth to a child or you have to raise a baby, but taking care of life, it could be a garden, it could be an animal, it could be something you do for Earth. When you take on that responsibility, I think it deepens our compassion and our empathy of how we need and want to live with others. So that type of work, having children at home and in taking responsibility for my own health and for my family's well-being, just puts us in a different space of empowerment. So I opened my own practice for bodywork, massage, prenatal care, postnatal care, and I have a space where other women also do work for wellness. And it's a really beautiful way to support people to walk in this earth and to take care of life. And I just want to see more of that. So that's partly how I stay sane and balanced, is feeling like every day I'm available in service for families and people to feel well and to be well. And that those type of experiences, taking your own health into your hands, empowers you, because at the end of the day, that's who you have, is yourself, and we are all works in progress, and that part helps me to think maybe there's possibilities for every single person in life that struggles to have change. That's a huge one. It's a really huge one, and I challenge everybody to see that sometimes, because I think we're really caught to just think of these polar opposites of good and evil, And I think we have to kind of bring both sides closer together. And I'm not saying at all, that what's wrong is not wrong. That is not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in order for us to keep this work flowing and moving forward, there's always some more work on the self to do.
So that was incredibly articulate. I just want to be clear. Society says you need to go to some clinical environment, like a hospital, to birth your child. Mm-hmm. And you thought for yourself. I mean, how did you even decide to? Was that something that your parents did? I'm just curious about what made you so at that time before you because you, I mean, you know, you were before you ever birthed your first child. How did you? Everybody's saying, "Go, what are you, crazy? You know, go to the hospital." But how did you know inside that you knew that home was where you wanted it to be?
Well, actually, I had done some of my homework, and I was really curious about my own birth experience as a baby, and learning more about that was fascinating to me. And understanding that from a whole different place of going, wow, our birth affects who we are today. Wow. Okay, so if that's so, how can we start to go back to understand more of who we have been, all those parts that we don't remember, that are in our subconscious, in our habits, in how we breathe. So that curiosity propelled me to study midwifery for a time. I'm not a practicing midwife at the time. I do work with women in a different capacity around prenatal and postnatal care. But that really prepared me to do the work. And so I'm not saying that's exceptional, and so nobody else should go do what, have home birth, because you should be that prepared. I'm just that voice that says that's how it was done for thousands of years before. Hospitalization and the connection between where sick people go when they're ill to where we bring in life was a newer phenomenon in the 20th century. In the 21st century now, it's even more, industrialized. So I'm just saying, let's make sure we're thinking about this. Is this really what you want? And I'm not saying that beautiful birth doesn't happen in hospitals. I'm not there on a daily basis to say, but I do read about it, study it, and hear enough to know that we need to remind women and families that the more that we ask for and create the kind of care and experiences that we see for ourselves and our families, that's where I feel like I have the most impactful connection to the world. So
that's beautiful.
That's where I like to focus my time. So Yashi Bakes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I just... Keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Oh, so I have my oldest daughter has a baking business called Yashi Bakes. And it's been in business for 2 years, almost 3 now. And it's a local baking company. She caters. She's done everything from weddings to birthday parties to events for STEM conferences for youth in inner cities, etc. And it's an awesome thing. And I'm here to say that I think we should tap into our children's abilities and their talents and nurture it like it's an art project and see what they're capable of. Because I think the time that we're moving in, the more that we empower the young ones to know what they like, the sooner they're better at it, the better. And then I know that sounded weird, but it's true. It's not like saying, oh, you have to do this, but then there's something they're always good at that they have. And it becomes that thing that feeds them so that they know that, like, wow, oh, this is baking, but this is business. And oh, this is actually, oh, yeah, you're right, this is science. And oh, this is now public speaking. So there's many paths to success. And I don't, as we were talking before, when we first started talking about the schools and segregation a bit and how these systems of government and school aren't set up for everybody. And we know they're not set up for Black and brown children, especially in the inner cities, to thrive. There's this whole prison to pipeline, schools to prison pipeline that's real. And go do your research about it if you don't know what I'm talking about. The thing I want to say, though, is our young people become the best examples for each other. And so I bring up my daughter, not because I do love her. Of course, I'm so proud. That's a given. But I'm using her as an example to other parents and educators and people working with young people that she gets a lot of attention because there's not enough young entrepreneurs. And so I think we need to empower young people to figure out what they're good at and start their little side small business, because there's going to be more and more opportunities for them the better they get at something. And they're not all just prepared for the sports track. And what if they have an injury? And they're not all prepared for this track. So we have to see where our children are talented. And, you know, schools don't always have the right platform for our children to discover themselves. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Tsadae, I think one thing that what you're articulating here is that it's not necessarily helping our youth discover what they love. It's actually teaching them to think for themselves, and that's why you're proud and you love your daughters, because she is a completely independent thinker. And this is the other issue that I have, is that I've devoted most of my show to I started interviewing a lot of jazz musicians, and a lot of music. You know, jazz is America's only original art form, and it's an art form that came over, that was cultivated here, but it started in the motherland. And one of the things that, you know, I interviewed Ahmad Jamal, the incredible piano player, and I taught history for a minute in Tucson, where I live, and you know, the textbooks say, or they kind of just, you know, they say, well, civilization started with the Greeks and the Romans, but that's not true. It started in the motherland of Africa, and the first universities were there, and medicines were invented there, and instruments were invented there. And again, I'd like you to talk to my audience about the first time you went back to when you went to the motherland, and if you could talk about their way of living and what inspired you.
Well, the first time I had the opportunity, well, not the opportunity, but the first time I actually went, I went to Ethiopia, and I can't speak of going to all of the motherland. I got to go to Ethiopia and part of Tanzania, Kenya, and Zanzibar. And it was an interesting time because it was actually a time when there was a war declared between Eritrea and Ethiopia. So there wasn't a lot of foreign outsiders coming into the country at that time, and there wasn't a lot of travel there. So I did experience kind of that heightened sensitivity of that pressing nature of war that I knew I wouldn't have that sense just being here in the States if I turned on the news. And that really struck me, that like, wow, you just can't really know what's going on somewhere else unless you're there. But it was the most profound thing to just have the opportunity, as how you introduced me, an African American who has to check that box as actually being Ethiopian, and being able to feel that and then touch down on the soil itself and feel like home. And then you also feel that sense of, wow, if your tongue doesn't make the same sound as the people who grow on that land, where is your home? If you don't feel home in a place that, wants you to check the other box, so you start to feel this sense of, well, I am always fine with being kind of the global person, and that I don't have to necessarily belong to one place or the other, but that you feel this sense of like, I'm a child of the earth. Wherever I am is Mama Earth, and this is my home, and other people have to deal with that. But Africa is a place that I hope everybody who wants and feels the calling to be there finds a way to get there, not to go there and get something, but to settle themselves and know for themselves, but also think before, like, what do we come with? What do we bring? What baggage do we always travel with? And, and what you offer, because you're always going to receive when you're home on the motherland. There's nothing like it. And the question that I was asked the most is, well, why would you leave? Once you're there, I felt a deep welcoming and invitation from many I met, like, why don't you stay here? So that's good to know. But that's the complexity, is when you don't grow up in a place or speak that language fluently, how do you live in two places and make a living, right?
I agree. I mean, it's so easier said than done, but I just know peeps sometimes, not with the motherland per se, but they wind up, we're talking about American cats, and they learn Chinese, and then like my best friend, he's homesick to go back to China. And so it's like, part of it is like, but I mean, this you were born in the States, and ultimately, I mean, after talking to you for 50 minutes here, it's obvious that you are somebody who is looking to empower the youth and continue to inspire peeps here. Your work needs to be done here, and so, but there is a conflict there when you feel your home there. I just feel like it's also, I just was up.
I think it's a deeper feeling of home in my heart. Like, there's that settling when you are curious about a place forever, that there's an uneasiness even in a place where you may have been born, that doesn't have a history of treating you like your home.
Right.
No,
yeah, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I just, we can definitely do part 2 or with your daughter or anyone you want, but I just would like to leave you with the thought of, if you would like to collaborate in some sort of public forum relating to the issues that we've been talking about today, I would be glad to come out and narrate it as a broadcaster and a journalist. It just, to me, I don't try to get too directly caught up anymore in atrocities that we see every day on media, although it's impossible to avoid. I just know that for 6 years, and after 1,000 primary source interviews with some of the heaviest cats, men and women in the world, I'm on a sacred journey, and I want to connect and actually work with other people that not only are educated, but they have an enlightening spirit. So as we wrap up part 1 here with Tsadae and Neway, I leave you with that, and if you ever want to collaborate on something, it would be my honor.
Thank you so much, and I would love to collaborate. I think there's a reason that we're meeting in this airspace, and I think there's great potential by how our conversation flows, that there's a great potential to reach other people who are open like ourselves.
I agree, and I think to push it even one step farther, I am still working on figuring out ways of talking to peeps that are completely closed-minded, but getting them to open their hearts, because that's really the only path forward. I like your tenor. Everything you say is pretty much poetic, and so when you feel like you might have something, I can just tell you I have been operating on a different frequency for several years, and that's not an egotistical thing. It's just everything is spiritual, and yeah, our connection is not coincidence. So all the best to you and your family, and I'll get you a copy of this later, and thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you so much. I wish you the best, and I look forward to what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a beautiful day, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Likewise.
Later on. Bye.
Peace and blessings.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Tsadae Neway, a very gifted entrepreneur, instilling leadership and individual thought in her family and other peeps and younger peeps, most importantly. We'll be back on Friday with Larry Klein and Michael Diamante. Until then, peace.